Hello everyone, welcome to Dell EMC OMNM Tech Talk. This is Bill Acevedo, and today's presentation we're going to talk about how we can manage Aerohive APs within OpenManage Network Manager, OMNM. First of all, this is an integrated multi-vendor solution to monitor, configure, and manage all devices, and this includes the Aerohive APs. We can manage the APs similar to any other switch that we can discover and manage. So we support automated discovery, traffic flow analysis, configuration file management, operating system deploy, firmware management, everything you see here, compliance management and reporting. So we're going to briefly touch on those today, and hopefully what is a short video to expose some of those features. Speaking of the multi-vendor, I wanted to show you some of the multi-vendor drivers that we have spanning many devices: Cisco, Juniper, Ruckus, Netgear, Sonos, there's Brocade, Aruba, and we do see the Aerohives here and the APs that we can manage. So let's start off with talking about discovery. We discover the Aerohive APs in a similar way to any other device. Simply just create a discovery profile, and I'll show you what I have on mine. We have set the network parameters in terms of the IPs or ranges you want to set, but generally all that's required here is an SNMP interface to identify the device when we go to interrogate it, and a command line interface. So this can be Telnet or SSH. And then if you want to be able to do a direct access to the device's web interface, you can also use an HTTP credential. You simply just add those and click inspect if you want to check the credentials, or just execute to go out and discover those devices. Once you have those in inventory, you'll see them in our resource manager. Here you see the Aerohive APs here in the middle. I'm going to right click and go to details to briefly show you some of the information that gets collected. And so on the left here we have general information about the device itself, the model, the versions of firmware, and various other information here. On the reference tree here on the right, we see that we have a listing of the interfaces that are on the device, and so we can simply click on the other interfaces and see that we're discovering the Wi-Fi interfaces as well as the management and Ethernet interfaces. If you wanted to go get more information on that, you can right-click and get details specifically about that particular interface. That would include alarms and performance. In the middle here we have what we call key performance indicators for CPU, memory, and temperature. We automatically will start collecting that information for you on those devices. And then we have a monitor status summary. We'll talk about monitors in more detail. But you'll see all the monitors that are active against this device, and we see we have some going against specific interfaces on those devices. There's also across the top here a network tab, gives us more specific network information about the device. We have alarms. There are alarms that have come in on this device if there are any, and event history is basically not alarm level, but they are events that will come in. You can see history in terms of things that get executed on the device, audit trails, as well as actions that get executed. Specific performance is here as well, and then we have a maintenance tab to show you other information. We'll dive into monitors a little bit more here in just a minute. First, I want to go over to topology, show you some of our topology capabilities. You can have a default topology that's showing all of your devices if you want to. When you have lots of devices, especially when you have a lot of APs, you may not be able to get all those on one screen. You may want to look at more of a hierarchical view. And so I will show you an example of that. You can have a view here where you define nodes. They can be however you want to define them, dynamically, like for example by subnet, by vendor type. That will be included in each of these nodes, or you can statically put devices in here. And so you'll see an example here of a list of devices that were put in the node. The nice thing about this feature is that it will roll up specific alarm levels based on what's in that node or container. So you can quickly see if you have a lot of locations or containers, you can see what alarm levels are at those particular locations. And so I can show you here, I put my wireless devices just by vendor, I defined them. But you can quickly see just those devices that have been defined that way. And so it's a quick way to drill in and see how it's attached to other devices that are also in that container. You see I have my Cisco device with an Ethernet connection over to this device. Looks like we've got some alarming going on right now. And so you see the alarm levels here. And so you can quickly go into a particular interface, right click and go to details. And it will take you right to the screen relative to that device. or that port or interface, and you can quickly see the alarms here. And so what we see here is we have some monitors that have thrown alarms about various things about the interface, wireless controller interface. The packet loss range is greater than 20%. So we can set these kind of things in our monitoring, and we'll look at that here in just a minute. But you'll get internal events like this, backup failure, success, compliance failure, success, as well as events from the device like a link down, those sorts of things. So let's go ahead and jump over to our performance. I'm going to go over to settings and monitor management. This is where we create our monitors and set the various characteristics here. I have 3 here. What I wanted to show you is the default interface monitor. This is an inbuilt seated monitor, and by default it will go out and monitor all your devices. I'm going to go and show you the default group is all devices. This would include the Aerohive devices or anything else in inventory. It will go out and start polling all the interfaces on those devices. We've preset some default attributes, SNMP attributes we're going to collect here at the bottom. You can add your own, but these are the ones out of the box. And what I want to show you is I simply copied that monitor and created this Aerohive one. And now I basically set the group to just monitor the Aerohive devices. And again, it's the same attributes here. And as I mentioned, there was thresholds and that we saw in that alarm window. You have the ability to set these thresholds. I'm going to go back to this original one here. You can set thresholds, and you'll see some that are set by default. Here's some, like, for example, on a bandwidth receive, where you can set a threshold where it will throw out certain traps based on what you set in terms of the boundaries. And so you can define these however you like, and as many as you like, for that matter. One additional item is conditions that is a little bit different than thresholds, in that you can define specific conditions around when you want events to be submitted or emitted based on criteria. For example, discards are greater than 100, packet errors in does not equal 75. Anyway, you can build these conditions up, and once those conditions are met, you will emit the event that you want, and that will show up in your event window. Later on, we'll talk about automation and how you can hook in automation to automatically email notify admins or even take some action on the network based on these events that come in. And the last one I want to show you here is a custom monitor where I've basically gone out and I've actually selected my target devices specifically here, and I've actually selected specific MIB attributes from the Aerohive MIBs, and so I'll show you how you do that. I'm going to browse here to my MIBs that I have in inventory. By the way, you can load your own as well and monitor those. But if I go to my Aerohive, I can simply find those MIBs, and I can drill into the particular OID or value that I want to get from that device, and I can just simply pick it here. If I want to see the transmit data frames, I can simply add that here and pull that into my monitor and start monitoring that. Very flexible and lets you customize your monitors the way you want. And so I guess the next thing here is to see the data. Now, you can right-click and do view monitor data here and see the raw data. That's not real useful, unless you're looking at just in the last few minutes. You want to see if it's coming in or not. You probably want to see these on a dashboard. So we're going to go over to our dashboard, and I'll show you some examples of dashboards I've created. To create these dashboards, you simply create a new one and add the entities you want to monitor. Now, these can be specific ports that are being monitored, specific devices. You just simply click add entity and add it here. And what will happen is on the available attributes, it will give you a list of attributes that are being monitored against that device that you can select from. And so here I've selected a few here. And so what we want to do is we want to launch that dashboard. And so you're going to, on the fly, you're going to see these different attributes automatically show up. Bandwidth received, transmit, packet loss. These are what I've selected in this monitor, and so you get a quick view of what's going on that device. And you can set the timeframes up here depending on what you want to see. Another example here is that user-defined one. I'm going to do a launch pop-up here. And so what you're going to see is those 3 MIBoids that I was monitoring: the client count, CPU utilization, and environmental temperature. I just disconnected my phone over here earlier today so that this would drop down, and then I logged on with the laptop, and then I logged in with my phone. So you see this going back up to 2 here. So it's a nice way to see different things, and this is just an example of some of the specific MIBs you could custom monitor You see my CPU is bouncing around along with the temperature a little bit. And the last one here is a specific one for at the device level again, picking the Aerohive device and monitoring some other attributes here. And I'm just going to launch the pop-up here so you can see that. And here we see another view of those attributes in a dashboard format. There's also a way to do custom dashboards to mix and match if you want to see different devices on different panes and that sort of thing. Okay, let's jump over to configuration management. On configuration management, we have a screen that's focused on doing your backup, restores, and deploys of firmware. Aerohive supports all of that. And so you can see here that as I select my Aerohive devices, my configuration files are showing up over here on the right. In order to back up a device, it's very simple. You can right-click and simply go to File Management and do a backup. Now you can do this with multi-select. On the Settings tab on the group locations, the groups and locations, there's a group for Aerohive. And so for all of our device drivers, there's a group. You can create your own groups, but you can also right-click on a group and back up the entire group if you need to. So it's a very convenient way to do things. And with all of these backup capabilities, as I will show you here, as I go to do a backup here, click it there. It brings up this dialog, allows you to add more equipment, add more groups. You can mix and match. And if there's any device options like backup to running or startup, those will show up. Otherwise, we just choose a default here. But with all of our options, you can add these to a schedule and have them execute on a regular basis, so you don't have to worry about backing them up manually. Once you have them backed up, you'll have, as I mentioned, these configuration files showing up in their version, so you can see which ones are here. And so a nice little feature is you can go and select, multi-select these, and simply right-click. If you're having an issue with a device, you want to know what happened since the last backup and compare. You can compare two selected configuration files, and easily you're going to see the differences between those two. You'll see on the left here I have some things that are missing from the one from version 1, or lines that are changed between the two are in green. They're still the same line, but they're just slightly different. And then again down here below, some differences. So a nice way to compare your files. And at the bottom here, you do have a visibility to all of your backup schedules, what's being backed up. In the middle here, you have all alarms that are filtered specifically for configuration activities, backup failures, those kind of things. So you can quickly see any issues around configuration. On the image repository is where you can import firmware. You would simply import for Aerohive. I don't think I have one here. Just go new firmware image, and you would just write in your name of your firmware. We do seed some firmware for PowerConnect and PowerConnect devices, but for like Force 10 and other devices, you may need to import your own here. Give it a description. Call it something like .1 R6, just as a guess here. Pick the family you want. Here it's Hive OS, and basically just go to your image import, select that file off of your local drive, and you're going to be good to go. We'll import that file, and then once that's imported, you can simply right-click that firmware image and say deploy. And it will give you a dialog here, again, similar to the backup and restore, to go and deploy that to whatever equipment or groups you want to deploy that to. Very nice feature, especially with the Aerohive. You only need to download the firmware once, and you can push that to any applicable APs that applies to in one swoop. So very nice one. You can also schedule those as well. And then at the bottom here, we have file servers that are we use for backing up and restore. And similar to the file management for backup and restore, you can right-click a device and do an on-demand deploy here as well, directly from the device. The next item on the list here is automations and actions. Actions are a way to do scripting where you can write commands directly to a device. Since we have command line access with our discovery, you can do any of these actions. There's a variety of things you can create. You can do show commands where we just go on the device and say show version or something. If you want to get that information back, you can do configure commands where you can actually go to the box and configure specific parameters. And you can hard code that to a specific command line, or you can put attributes in it so it's a little more flexible. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. You can also do configuration file templates. Simply paste in a template and put attributes on the items you need to have attributes on. For example, management interface, and you can easily push down templates to 3 or 4 or multiple devices, and then push those out. You can run external files, batch files, executables from here. You can also do Perl scripting as well as do JSON scripting for your actions. So let's take a look at some example actions here. I'm going to look at an example show command. I want to on this particular one, all I'm doing is a show connected. I believe on this one, show connected devices. Oh, this is showing the management station. So it's just a simple command that the device accepts. Now there's other commands. This is just one. I think show station does the same thing here, but let's just execute that and see what it will do here. We're going to pick our device, and my Aerohive here, I'm going to pick this one here. I could do multiple here, but I'm just going to do one for our example here. Now these actions can be created in such a way that you don't need to necessarily execute them from the action script. You can go to the resource, right-click, and execute the action, and it will know what device to run that on. And so here you see the show connected, and here you see my phone is connected here, and it's showing you the IP that it was given, and then you also see the IPv6 address that was connected. Looks like my laptop is not connected here. You were just seeing the phone at this point, but it's a very easy way to see information. Here's another one for show DNS. I can actually look at the history on this one and see what was executed in the past here. And looks like I had some failures there. And so that will show you that very quickly. Let's execute that and see if we can get a success this time. I'm just going to pick that one device again, add selection done, execute. Again, you can schedule these if you want to, come look at them later. So here you go, showing my DNS configuration on that box. If you want to make sure it's standard configuration, it's an easy way to view it. Bring it up and view it. Here's a more advanced one here. Let's just go with an SFlow one. I'll show you a configuration script here. Now you see here it's a CLI configure, and I'm going to go directly to the script to show you how simple this is. I basically cut and paste the command that the device requires, and then I can put attributes on the areas that I need to make it more dynamic. For example, the SFlow name, the interface, CLI name that I need there, and then the collector is basically the OMNM IP address if you want OMNM to start collecting traffic flow data. And so you can create these attributes very easily in the attribute screen here simply by just adding them here, and you'll see they're here. And there's a variety of things you can create here in terms of the types of attributes you can put in there. Very flexible. Let's just see if I have an example of the history on this one. Looks like I don't here. I'm going to go ahead and execute this to show you how this would work. So you would create that script with the attributes, and just by the fact of adding the attributes, you're going to get this nice little screen that pops up. And again, I didn't execute this from the device, but let me just show you that since I'm talking about that. I'm going to go to Resources. Again, I'm going to find my Aerohive device that I want to execute this against, and I'm going to go to Actions just to show you a different way to execute this. And this is a config command now to do SFlow. So I'm going to pick that one here. And I'm going to say continue, and you'll see now I have a nice little screen that pops up based on those attributes. Here I can select the interface here that I want, and it's specific to that device. Let's say I want SFlow to run on this Wi-Fi 0 device or interface. Pick a name here. I put some in here, but you can allow the user to put their own in here. And then the IP address of your OMNM. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to with the preview here, what it's going to do. So you'll see here, here's the command it's going to send, SFlow instance demo 1, interface Wi-Fi 0. Collector address is my IP address and polling interval. That will push that exact command to the box. So it gives you a very easy way to, you can standardize how people put what people put on boxes, how they do it, the specific parameters, and so it gives you a lot of flexibility in that area. So those are actions. I'll go back to my Actions tab here to show you that. So actions also tie into our automation framework. Our automation framework is essentially event processing rules. As events come in, we can trigger something to happen. Let me just show you an example of that. Have an example one here. I'm going to edit. And so this is a sample rule. You would come in, give it a name. And the key parts of this is that you would add specific events that it's triggering on. This could be something like a link down. You can simply search for a link down type event trap. And generally, that's going to be something like ifmib or RFC 1213. you would add that particular event. Now you can add more than one here. It could be linked down plus something else. And this could be an internal event, for example, a backup failure or some other execution history failure. You could add that event here. But beyond that, you can also filter. You don't necessarily want this to happen on every link down. Maybe you only want to have it happen on specific devices like this particular IP. There's other things you can add here. You could add specific sysobject ID if that's the specific model, if that's what you want to key on. You'll get different variables in here depending on the event you've chosen up here, and you'll see things like if admin status, if index, oper status. These are all var-bines that are part of the link down. But if you choose other ones, you would have other options here. But it allows you to be a little more flexible in on how you want this action to execute. So again, this is event processing rule automation based on an event coming in, some filter condition, and then we're going to go execute some action. So here you see an example of something happens. I want to go back up the device. Then I want to northbound forward a trap. And here then I want to send an email to the admins to tell them what happened. You simply add actions by this add actions option here. This is how I added the email forward northbound. But you can add custom actions that you've created or that are in the system. And these could be actions to go do things, do a show command, or actually undo something on the network or configure something on the network. We have seeded actions, but you could create your own similar to what I just showed you. I'm going to show you an example of our actions here in a minute on using a compliance policy. So I'm going to jump over to that screen real quick on compliance. And so compliance and change determination is an area of configuration where you want to understand what's going on with your configuration files. At one level, you just want to know if the configuration changed. In order to do that, you simply turn on what's called this change determination process in our schedule. Simply click enable. And what's going to happen when you enable that is it's going to go out periodically based on your schedule, and it's going to interrogate every box's configuration again and determine if it changed since the last time that it was run. And so what you'll get is you'll get an alarm in your event window saying that a change determination was detected on a what device. Now you just get an alarm and you can visually inspect that and try to go do a comparison manually if you want, or you can hook it into our automation to be notified via email. So that's one level. Basically just tells you if you've got drift in your configuration files or not. Compliance policies take it to a little bit deeper level where you define what you want to see on a specific device, or you want to scan for specific information. And so you can basically define that criteria. And I want to give you an example here. Here's one that I will edit this compliance policy and show you. So in this one, I'm basically saying, let's go out and scan the output of an adaptive CLI. That's also our actions. It's basically the output of a show command. So I'm going to go run this output, this action, to see the output of that. And I'm going to scan that for specific criteria that we'll look at in a second here. But you could also go and scan the device directly with a backup. You can scan the current config that's in the database. We have labeling that you can do on your configuration files. You can scan by that or by date. So this is just scanning a file. It's an output of a show command. And the criteria is on our criteria side here. I will show you that. And let's say you want to enforce that all your Aerohive devices have specific DNS on it, specific primary, specific secondary, specific tertiary. So we're going to go out and we're going to go scan that it contains. I just basically cut and paste this out of the configuration that I had and put it in here. And so it's going to look at every single configuration on every target that you specify for these specific line items. So if it contains this, it's going to say it's okay. If it does not contain this, you will get what's called a compliance policy failure. Now you have a lot of flexibility on how you create these policies. You can do, does not contain. You can match on regex, match each line, does not match each line. A lot of flexibility here to allow you to scan in a very discrete way the configuration files for the things you're looking for that you want to be on there or that you want to not be on there. So. So once you scan, again, as I mentioned, it's going to emit an event. And so maybe you want to fix this situation. Maybe you scan it and it's not in there. And so you want to go fix the situation. So you don't need to go and wait for an event to go manually do it. Let's just fix it automatically. So this is where we get into our remediation actions. And so you can create an action since you know what the policy fails and you know because of the event, you know what IP it comes from. You can go and say, to remediate that action with event processing rule. So I created an action here remediate this DNS setting. So let's look at that action. We've already looked at some, but let's look at this one. And so my script now says, go and set these commands. Set server IP this, set DNS server second this, and then DNS server third this. So this will put back what we want, or what our compliance policy failed for. We'll make sure we go out and put those commands back on the box. So how do I, again, see that working? It's in an automation. So what's going to happen is compliance fails, you get an event, the event processing rule kicks off and calls this remediation action. Let's take a quick look at that automation so we can sync that up here in our minds. So here's the automation here. And this was now saying, if I indicate, or if I get an event for a red seal compliance failure, and it's on the specific policy, Aerohive DNS servers compliance, if it fails, then I'm going to go run this action. And here I'm going to send an email. I'm going to do a backup, and I'm also going to go and run this action that we just looked at to set the standard Aerohive DNS. So that's what would kick off and resolve that automatically for you. So it's a very powerful way to make sure things stay in compliance, and you're not doing a lot of manual stuff because we'll just do it for you. All right, the last thing here I want to talk about is traffic flow, and we can do traffic flow on these devices as well. And what you see here is my Aerohive device here. We have these portlets set out that show you general categories of things. You can look at traffic flow by the device sending the data. You can even see by component of the device sending the data. If you have it at the component level configuration, you can see the applications, traffic flow receivers, who's receiving the most data, who's sending the most data, the endpoints, sending or receiving, which one's the highest. You can see by conversation which two nodes are talking to each other. You can even see protocols, and then even autonomous system if you're looking at that. Let's drill into by equipment, and you can do this for any of these portlets, by the way. And let's say we're interested in what's going on with this particular Aerohive device. I can simply double-click or single-click that, and I immediately get a graph over time of that exporter, what's going on just in terms of raw packets that are being exported by this device. We can further interrogate that simply by selecting this drop-down. I will keep my context of this exporter, but I can also see what applications is this exporter seeing. And so I see just a few here. It's not a very heavily used AP, but CICMP and IGRP, but you can see that over time. Same thing with things like conversations. Which two devices is this particular exporter detecting the most traffic on? So I can see it went to this device from this device. So it allows you to drill in and see, maybe where your traffic patterns are at. You can see it by endpoint again over time. You can see by protocols, and so here you see by TCP, UDP type protocols, and then you can do senders if you want to see which one is sending the most data. It looks like this device is the most active sending data, or same thing with receivers. So you can see these over time, and then you have options here as well across the top here to see larger spans of times. You can get more granular with the data if you want to see 10-minute increments or daily or weekly, depending on what you want to see. A nice troubleshooting tool is if you know of an IP address, you can simply put it in here, and you can drill into that particular graph for that particular device in terms of what its traffic flow parameters are. And then you can see more than just the top 5. You can see top 10, 25, bottom 5, 10, 25, that kind of thing. And then there's an option to see the direction of the traffic if you want to see that, and then snapshotting of the data, so you can easily get back to these things and see these over time. So very nice way to see your traffic patterns, maybe even troubleshoot if you're having an issue where the traffic is coming from. Then the last thing I wanted to jump into was reports. We have a whole variety of inventory reports. All the Aerohive stuff will show up on the inventory reports. I'm going to just show you a couple examples here. You can do trend, comparison, and table reports simply by creating the right template here for whatever you want. And then from any template, you can create reports. Here's an example of a trend report where I'm just going to execute that, just give you an example here. And so we're just seeing Aerohive bandwidth utilization %. And so you can throw that on a trend report. if you wanted to see that and export it to somebody over time, and you can see here now. And based on my filter, I'm getting multiple devices here, but you're seeing the various things on here that are being monitored in terms of interfaces. And then another example here is, for example, memory. So you can do the same thing with traffic flow reports. Any time-sensitive data reports, you can create these kind of reports over whatever time period. Then here's one here for the CPU and client count report that we saw the dashboards for earlier. So here you see the AH client count and AH CPU utilization. So you can change these names, by the way, and customize these reports. See that over time. So anyway, there's some very flexible activities on the reporting. Allow you to do just about anything there. Okay, that kind of wraps up. It's very high level, touches on most of the major features. Again, Aerohive supports them all, and I want to thank you for watching.